So up to this point, we have only been using one table in our queries. Now we are going to talk about joining tables or using multiple tables when we query information. This is one of the powerful features of databases, the ability to cross information or types of information over multiple tables. So to do this, we are going to create a query just like we normally do. So query design, but this time we are going to add both of these tables. It is very, very important that you add them in the correct order. So I want account manager table first. So I'll choose that first and click add. And then I want the account table added second. So I choose that and click add. I close my show table and I resize my file so I can see all the fields of both tables. If you notice, there is a line that runs between the fields that are the same in both tables. In this case, there is a field called account manager number in account manager and one in the account table. So these are called the join lines. Now, to add fields, it's the same thing. I'm just going to double click on the fields that I need. Some will be from the account manager table and some will be from the account table. So first of all, I want the account manager number from the account manager table. And then I want the last name from that same table and the first name. And then from the other table, I want account number and the account name. I can tell which tables these things are coming from down here on this table line. That allows me to double check if I've added the correct fields from the correct tables. So I'm going to go ahead and sort by account manager number first. So I'll make that ascending and then descending from account number. And then I'll run the query. It will query both of those tables and pull out that information. It'll give me the last name of the account manager and their number, and then tell me which accounts are attached with that account manager so that I can see which accounts each account manager has. I'm going to go ahead and click the Save button, and I'll call this a manager account query. Now, I'm going to go ahead and return to Design View, and remember we talked about this join line right here. I can change the properties of how these tables interact with each other. So to do that, if I click on the line so that it's highlighted, and then I right click, I can choose Join Properties. I have these options right here, 3 different options of how to return information from the table. So by default, it includes only rows where the joined fields from both tables are equal. So that means that if there is an account manager that does not have any accounts right now, their name is not appearing when I run the query because the account manager has to be included in both tables. If I want to include all records from the account manager, so no matter what, even if you don't have any accounts and only those records from account where the join fields are equaled, then I can choose option 3. And then option 2. And then option 3 is the opposite of that. Okay, so now if I choose 2, even if there's some account managers that don't have any current accounts, we will still see their names. I'll click OK. Now I will run the query. So now you can see Peter Liu has no accounts right now, but I still see his name in this query. So far during this chapter, we have only done queries, but we can also run reports on queries. So in chapter 1, we talked about how that queries are a quick way to find information, where reports are similar, but they're much neater and formatted nicer. So if you were going to print something out to hand to your boss, then you probably want to do it in a report form. Whereas if you just need to find some quick information, you'll probably be using a query. We can take information from a query and make a report out of it. So that's what we are going to do next. So I'm going to click that manager account query that I just created, and I'll select it, and then I'll go to my Create tab and choose the Report Wizard right here. And then in this report, I decide what fields I want. In this case, I want all of them. So I'm going to hit my double chevron right there. That adds all of the available fields to the selected fields. And then I'll follow the wizard. I'll click Next. It'll say, do you want to add any grouping labels? You will not specify any grouping, so I'll click the Next button. And you have already specified the sort order in the query, so there's no need to do it again here. So I'll click Next here. For my layout, I want tabular, and I want it to be portrait orientation. So I keep those the same, and then I click Next. Be careful not to go past this, because here is where you can change the name of the report. So instead of Manager Account Query, I'm going to make it Manager Account Report. And I'll click Finish. And you'll see now I have a nice, neat list of that same information that was in the query. If I wanted to go ahead and print it, I could hit my print menu right here and print that report to hand to my boss or somebody else. Now, in the previous module, last chapter, you learned how to create a form for the account table, but you can also create a form for a query. So we also talked about this last chapter. A form is a much neater way to enter information into a database, especially if you have no database knowledge. More than likely, when you are working for a company, you will be using some kind of form to enter in the information versus doing it on the back end like we've been doing for our queries. So to create a form, you first of all select the query that you want the form for, and then you go to your Create tab, and you find the Form button that's in the Forms grouping. You click on it. So here is your form for this query, and you'll see the different fields that are part of that query. So I'll hit Save. It is prompting me to save it. I don't want it to be called Query. I want it to be Manager Account Form. So I'll go ahead and choose that. So last chapter we talked about importing data from Excel. Now we are going to talk about exporting data to Excel. So in this case, we are going to take data from our database and export it, move it into an Excel document. So to export external data, I will select the Manager Account Form over here on this side. I will choose external data and being very careful to notice the difference between the import area and the export area. I want to export, so in the export area, I will choose Excel. And then I'll browse and make sure that this information is going somewhere where I can find it again. This time I'm going to put it on my desktop. And I want my file format to be an Excel workbook. And I can choose whether or not I want to open this file when I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and open it just so you can see what it looks like. I'll click OK. And it will open up Excel and give me all that information in an Excel spreadsheet. So that's how you export something to an Excel spreadsheet. Now, if I wanted to do this continuously, like maybe once a month I want to make a spreadsheet, I could save the export steps so that I could do that. That also gives me the option to create a specific task. So if I wanted, I could create an Outlook task. This means that I could put it on my calendar for once a month for this to happen. And then I could save the export if I wanted to. I am not going to create the Outlook task. I'll just hit Create Export. So now that I've done that, since I've saved those steps on that external data tab, you'll see that there is an option for saved exports. If I click on that, I can see that export option and I can click on it and run it every time that I want to save that information to a spreadsheet. It's very handy. Now, it's not possible to export data from Access to a standard Word format. You could make it an RTF file, which is a rich text format file. Then you can do that information. You can use that information for other things like doing mail merges or things like that. I'm not going to go through that because I don't think that's something you need at this point. Sometimes you want to add criteria in a query that has more than one table. The reason that you might want to do that is you might not want to include all the possible records. Maybe you would just like to create a report showing only those accounts whose amount paid was greater than $20,000. If that's the case, you would relate the tables and include fields just as you did before, but you would also include some criteria. So let me explain. I'll come to my queries, my manager account query, right click on it and choose design view. That will open it in this view right here. And I can go over to my account and I want to add from my account table the amount paid. So I'll double click and add that field to my query. And then I want to know anybody that has paid more than $20,000. Remember, when you're entering numbers, that you don't put dollar signs or commas or any types of punctuation. So there's my $20,000. Now, if I run my query, it will return only those accounts that have paid more than $20,000. This must be my high paying account group. I'll go ahead and close this query. I don't really need to save it, so I'll choose no. You can also include some kinds of calculations in your queries. So to do that, we have to actually create a calculated field. So let's start from the beginning. I am going to start creating a query in Query Design. I want just the account table for this one. I do want the fields account number, account name, amount paid, and current due. So I have those fields in. So now in the next available area, I am going to right click and choose Zoom. This zooms me in to this field and I can now type my formula. So I'm going to type total amount, colon, and then, so that's going to be the name of this field, and then a space, and I'll put a bracket. A bracket indicates the name of a field, so you put it so that it knows it's looking for the field with that name. Make sure you spell everything correctly. So amount paid with brackets around it, plus current due with brackets around it. That will indicate that I want to add these two fields together. I'll click my OK button. It will add that as part of my field. And then when I run the query, it will add that information, amount paid with the current due, and give me a total amount. The total amount information, that text right there came from when I typed it in the Zoom look. So total amount, this is the name of that column. And then these are the two columns that I'm adding together. So total amount, and then it adds amount paid with current due to get this number right here. Now, in Module 1, you change the caption for a field in a table. So you can do that for fields in queries as well. So to do that, let's go back to my design view. And I'm going to come down to the amount paid field, select that field, and show the property sheet of that field. Once I've done that, there is a caption area that I can click in and choose what I want the caption to be. This is not changing the name of this field. It is just calling it by another name when you run the query. And then in the caption box for current due, I'm going to make that be due. Now when I run my query, it says paid and due, and it shows that information. Okay, so let's talk about calculating statistics in Microsoft Access. It does have some built-in statistics. When you hear the word statistic, you might get a little worried, but this is actually fairly simple because Access will do it for you if you know how. So I'm going to create a new query to begin with for the account table only. And I want to include the amount paid in my query. And then I want to include a row here that will come up with the total of amount paid. So if I look up here on my Design tab, Query Tools Design tab, there is an option to turn on totals. Here, and I can get rid of my property sheet. But when I click totals, it's a toggle on and off. You'll notice down here a total row appears. And then it says by default group by. You can click on that and change it to any one of these types of totals. So if I want to know the total amount or the average amount paid, then I can choose average right here and run the query, and it will give me one number, and that is the average number of the amount paid by all the accounts. So calculating statistics, just make sure you turn on that total row. Now, how do you use criteria in calculating statistics? Let me return to Design View, and I'll show you what I mean. So, let me go ahead and include the account manager number into my query. And right now I have the average, but now if the average of the amount paid, but if I go to the account manager and I click in that totals row, and then I can choose where, and under criteria, I can put 31. So this will give me the average of amount paid where the account manager is number 31. So it will only give me the average paid from that one account manager. There we go. So now let's talk about using grouping. Statistics are often used in combination with grouping so that statistics are calculated for a group of records. So for this database, maybe we want to calculate the average amount paid for the accounts of each of the account managers. So let's take a look at how to do that. I'll go back to Design View, and I'm going to go ahead and clear my grid. And then I am going to add the account manager number and the amount paid to my query. Oops, amount paid. I have my total row already on, so I want to group by for the account manager number, so it'll group by the account manager numbers, and I want the average amount paid. So now it should return to me every account manager number and the average paid to them. So here we go, 3 account managers and each of their averages. We can see account manager number 58 probably needs a bonus, whereas account manager 31 probably might need some help. I don't know. But you can see the difference between the average amount that's paid. Finally, let's talk about cross-tab queries. So a cross-tab query calculates the statistics for data that is grouped by 2 different types of information. It's much more easy to understand once you see it in action. So to create a cross-tab query, we click on the Create tab on the ribbon, and then we click Query Wizard. And we want to choose Cross-Tab Query Wizard and click OK. We want to make sure that we've selected the account table. We'll click the Next button, and then we want to add from that From that table, we want the state. So I'll click on state and click the chevron to add that field to my selected fields. And then I'll click next. Now it's asking me, so that gives me the rows. Each of the rows will be a different state. And then which fields do you want as column headings? So for column headings, I want the account manager number. And I will click next. Now it wants to know what I want to happen. What kind of information do I want to appear in each of the boxes? So I want current due. So I'll click current due, and I want the sum. So basically what this is doing is telling me the sum of the current due in each of the states per account manager. So I'll click next. Here is where it'll prompt me to name it. Make sure you name it correctly. State Manager crosstab. And I'll click Finish, and it will run the query, and it will show me two states over here as my rows. It'll show me each of my account managers and how much they owe or how much is due to them in each one of the states. And it'll also give me a total row with that information as well. So that's a crosstab query. So one little thing to talk about is how to format this navigation pane. Really, we probably should have done this in the beginning, but all your access objects are here. There is a little drop-down box to decide how to group them by. Right now, they're grouped by object types, but if you wanted to group them by tables, it will give you the account manager table and everything that's associated with it, the account table and everything that's associated with it. So you can basically just choose how you want to group items. I think object type makes the most amount of sense. But you can do that. You can also search for a specific table. So if I type in MA, it will give me objects that have that desired string of words in it. So it's important to be able to search for something. So this concludes Access Module Chapter 2. I highly recommend that you also do the training associated with this chapter, and you may want to watch. I know it's a long lecture, but you may want to watch it more than once. There's a lot that's covered here. I totally think you can do it, but if you have no experience with Access, it might be good to run through things a couple of times. So, see you in class.